Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show. Today we are going to talk about how to hire and retain the right staff for business. Now, some people are just waiting for the robots to come and just do what they tell them, but our guest today is going to show you how he empowers businesses to attract and hire top-level talent right now, so you don't have to wait for the robots to come. So on this podcast, we've interviewed people from all walks of life, from your A-list celebrities, billionaires to Olympic gold medalists. And today we have coach, consultant, keynote speaker, Kolby Goodman. Kolby, welcome to the show. How are you going?
I'm doing well, Rob. Thanks so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. So perhaps a good place to start, Kolby, is there'll be parts of the audience that don't know about you and your background and so forth. So perhaps tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and some of the organizations that you work with.
Yeah. So my story begins way back when in corporate America. I was in technology, started off in the help desk, resetting passwords, setting up email boxes, doing the grunt work, and spent the next decade of my career ascending the ranks into leadership and management. Really liked the work for a long time, and then quickly towards the end fell out of love with it. What I say is I was working on projects I didn't care about with people I could not stand, making people I bet you I'd never met a bunch of money. And so as I reevaluated my life and wanted to come out of corporate America, saying, how could I add value? And that was through helping people advocate for themselves in the workplace. I had a knack for writing a good resume and having a good interview and injecting the people skills that sadly are kind of lacking in a lot of technology parts of companies, technology companies as a whole. And that spurred me to start a business and spend the next 10 years of my career helping over 4,000 people land the jobs of their dreams. It's extremely fulfilling, help people break through a lot of their own self-beliefs that were limiting, that were untrue, to get them where they wanted to go in their career. Now, doing all this and helping these great people, started to hear and collect a vast amount of horror stories and cringe experiences when it came to poorly prepared companies and interviewees who were not ready to engage top tier talent. And I said, okay, like if these companies are subconsciously or unable to not drive away top talent, how can I help them better identify the right people, engage them in the interview, identify them for hiring, and bring them on board more effectively? And that's where Best First Now was born, is helping people hire the best, hire them first, and hire them now.
Nice. And some of the organizations you've worked with, is there some big names in there?
Yeah, Panasonic, Marriott Hotels, Banner Health here in the States, a lot of small medium businesses as well. And those people, what I found, whether you're a big conglomerate, one of tens of thousands, or you're one of 10, we tend to hire based on how we've been hired. So when I say there's a lot of generational trauma when it comes to hiring, we hire based on how we were hired by our boss. They were hired based on how their boss hired them, and this goes back managerial generations. And so how do we address and break those bad habits so that as a leader, you can make your life so much easier, so much enjoyable, so much more fulfilling, because you're surrounding yourself with the right talent who is bought in to the problems that you need solved.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that are facing hirers right now?
I think as we've evolved, especially in the last 15 years with things like AI, applicant tracking systems, automatic, applications, instant applications, we tend, and you'll see it right now, you go on any popular job board and type in your profession, all the job listings, all they're going to do is tell you what you should be doing, right? We need somebody with this experience to do these responsibilities, right? They're asking applicants to check the box.
Yeah.
And thus people are hiring box checkers. They're not hiring critical thinkers. They're not hiring problem solvers. They're not hiring culture fits. They're hiring people who can do the dang job. And what they're finding is that while this person might be the most qualified, it doesn't mean they're the best fit. And so we need to start shifting our conversation around hiring and partnering with new employees with those who are willing, able, and excited to solve the right problems versus simply just those who are capable of doing the most work.
So you said before that we tend to hire based on how we were hired and what we're used to seeing and so forth. So is there a part of this that is a re-education, if you like, of employers as to, just like you said there, you've been getting the box checkers, or that's what you're looking for, but in this day and age, we need somebody that perhaps is more creative in thinking, not necessarily because it depends on the role,
Mhm.
but is that something that we need to do? Educate the
Um,
employers better to get them to understand in this day and age, your effective employee looks different to perhaps it did when you were employed.
Absolutely. Right. Re-education or just education in the first place. A lot of leaders out there, a lot of those who have been bestowed with management and leadership were done so not because they had the people and the leadership skills, but were done so because they could do the thing, right? They could develop the software, they could, account the client, they could, deliver the product or service the client,
Mm.
right? But when you get raised up in the leadership and management, sadly, too often not, they're kind of left on a limb. There's little to no training when it comes to dealing with people, when it comes to managing conflict, and especially when it comes to building and maintaining a team. And so the education and the re-education that I focus on is, how do we change the conversation? How do we make this less of a um, manager, leader and subordinate, and more of, I'm a leader who's going to bring together the best of the best, the highly talented, the creative thinkers, the problem solvers, and empower them to do their best work,
Yeah.
right? Instead of saying, I need to do this role, I need to do it well, this is how I need you to do it. We don't, good leaders out there are learning that can no longer ask their employees to be order takers. They need to be asking them to be creative problem solvers.
And do you think there's been a shift since COVID in terms of on both sides, what perhaps an employer needs, and is perhaps now changed their thinking in terms of what they need to look, and certainly in terms of what the hirers are looking for as well? Um, I feel that here. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and look, in my city here, we were locked down more than any city in the whole world. We had 6 lockdowns over 310 days or something of lockdowns, like just crazy. But yeah, is there a shift in what we're perhaps now looking for pre-COVID and in this post-COVID? Well, even though it's still rampant, but nobody's talking about the environment.
mid-COVID life, right? I think what COVID did for a lot of employees is make them think, am I doing the work that makes me engaged?
Mm.
And the way that I look at it is, it's not about, I mean, my joke is, Rob, if our job titles were all we did the most, we'd all be professional meeting attendees and email responders, right? And so what we need is more connection, more engagement with the work. And I believe, in the way that I coached on my candidate clients and the way that I engage with my employer clients now, is, let's not find somebody who can check the box, but somebody who can solve the problem. Because if you hire somebody who is continually solving problems that give them energy, that give them fulfillment, that get them excited, you're going to have an employee for life,
Mm.
right? And so I think the shift has been made, is people want more meaning in their work. They don't want it to be easy. I think that's the other misconception, is like, oh, people just want a handout. They just want to show up and get paid. I'm not a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in, humans innately want to be positively challenged because we do want to grow, right? We like that friction. But employers are simply just expecting a lot of employees to come in and be a cog in the machine. And so if you can look at the way that you hire, look at the way that you treat your employees and say, well, what problems are they helping us solve? How are they making management life easier? How are they making leadership lives easier? How are they making their peers' lives easier by engaging in the things that they're already excited, the stress they're excited to engage with?
Yes.
I think that is the biggest thing now, is that people say, well, I don't want to because we had this shock of this global, shut down, because this entire globe has been teetering on the edge of another Great Depression or recession, right? Like, we're realizing that life is flipping short. So I don't want to do any work. I don't want to be I don't want to be a robot, even though they're coming fast and furiously, as you mentioned earlier. I want meaning to my work. I want to feel challenged in the positive way. And that's the biggest change, is employees are standing up and saying, I want to do good work, but I don't simply just want to do any work.
Do you think one of the big challenges or problems even is that most people, like if I think about myself when I was, like, I'm 55 now, I think about when I was 16. And so here in Australia, our sort of high school model is, so around 16, I'm in year 10. So there's a lot of pressure at the age of 16 in year 10 to pick your subjects for the next 2 years. Now, keep in mind, this was back in the like the early 80s. And so it was an era where whatever job you picked, there was an expectation that that's what you would do for the rest of your life, because that's what the previous generation did. That's what my dad did, and so forth. So there's a lot of pressure on you to pick the right thing. And because I had no idea. So for me, I guess we tend to gravitate towards the things that we're good at. I wasn't good at a whole bunch of things. And I was really uncertain, but I'm very left brain, so I didn't know that at the time, but numbers was something that resonated with me. So I liked mathematics, and I liked sort of the business side of things. We did a subject, we did accounting, and I thought, oh, maybe that. So then that's the stream I made that decision at the age of 16, and then I went on to uni. I then went and worked with Coops and Lyram before they were PwC, became a chartered accountant, went to work in big corporates and stuff for 19 years, and then realized that I wanted to run my own business in the health and fitness space and have a greater impact on people. But I see, like with my clients, I see it when I go into, like, I have high level meetings with people, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how the heck did you get into this role? Because you are so not the right person for this role. So I guess come back to my question now is, how much do you see that we're putting people into roles, but they really shouldn't be doing that role to begin with, because they're not excited about what it is that they do, and they're thinking, well, I need to do something, and so I just, I'm trying to get through the week so I can get to the weekend to recover enough to start again and get through another week. Is that something that's just a fundamental problem?
Yes, I think, and that's the one thing that I teach leaders and managers how to do, is how do you gauge the engagement of somebody in the role, right? Because I think, as a self-assigned nerd in the sense of technology and gadgets and the things that are quintessentially that, right? Like, I was the kid who took apart the VCR and put it back together when he was 5 years old, right? I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd about those things. I think we're all nerds about certain things. For you, at a point for you, it was numbers, and now it's empowerment. Now it's pushing yourself mentally and physically, right? You're a nerd about that. So it's about having employers engage with candidates about what are they really jazzed about, for lack of a better term. A lot of the conversation that happens in the interview is, are you capable of doing the work? Tell me about a time where you did the work. Work, right? And so that puts the employer at a disadvantage in two ways. One is that all you're doing is hiring somebody who did it in the past, and you won't want them to do it again. And so you're not looking for future engagement. You just want them to go through those motions for eternity, which will never happen. And you'll have to fill that position again in 1 to 2 years, because that person will be burnt out or bored.
Yes.
And secondly is, you're not allowing that person to expand to their potential, right? Because you're all you're doing is buying action, but really what you do is you need to understand thought and logic.
Yes.
Right? Like, traditionally, when I was a career coach, right, people come to me and say, well, I know the STAR method of interviewing: situation, task, action, result.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't tell the whole story. You tell me the plot of what happens, that's great. What I'm interested in as a decision maker is, who is the character, the lead character in that story, and what the heck is their motivation and their thought process?
Yes.
But we're not getting that deep, right? We are not engaging with each other at a deeper level. It's very surface level. It's very performative. There is a lack of authenticity.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we're forced to go to the lowest common denominator, which is, can you do the job?
Yes.
And so by elevating the conversation about interest, about really gauging curiosity within the role, turning it from more of a doer into a problem solver opportunity, then you get connected on a human to human level, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people go into the conversation, and yes, there needs to be trust and there needs to be quality of work, right? But you should also be excited about hiring that person.
Yes.
And if you're not excited about it, you're gonna have to go through this whole you're gonna have this whole dog and pony show 6, 12, 18 months later, because that person's going to be well their way out the door, either because they've escaped and they found something else, or because you know that it's not a good fit and it's not going to last any longer.
So if we flip to, say, the candidate, what would you say the biggest challenges that are facing candidates in this day and age to put themselves in the best position to come across as being excited, but authentically? There's we don't like fakers, because you can see through that at some point. But what would you say are the biggest challenges for them?
So it's the same question, kind of in inverse, which is, what challenges are you excited to solve? What difference are you trying to make? Because that helps you position yourself in two ways. One, if you can talk about the problems you solve, why you solve them, and how those solutions impact the people around you,
Yep.
you become an obvious business decision, because those impacts need to be about making money, saving time, or limiting risk, kind of the 4 pillars of business. But also, as a problem solver, you become somebody's relief. Not just hyperbolic, but you can become somebody's savior, right? One thing I used to teach on, and from the candidate side, one thing I have my employers ask now is, how can the next hire in this role make your life easier?
Yes.
Right? Ask that question outright. Make it, if you're the candidate, ask your next boss that. If you're the boss, ask your next candidate that. Because that puts you in a fundamental role of solving problems and easing the lives of others, having an impact not just on the work, but on the people.
Yes.
Right? And so by shifting that approach, by engaging with them deeper, what I like about that question is twofold. One is that on both sides of it, not expected, so you're going to catch them off guard, and then because they're off guard, secondly, is they're not going to have a rehearsed answer for you.
Yes.
Because
sorry, keep going.
Oh, sorry, no, please go for it.
I was going to say that is a unique shift in a candidate's mind as well, I think, because I think most people are going in saying, okay, well, I've got to think of these situations, task-orientated things that I've done in the past. And yes, this is what the job description said, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you come from a mindset of what problems am I solving for this organization, and focusing on getting that information out in an interview, then that is going to set you apart from what most people are doing, which is just answering questions and getting out of the interview as quickly as possible. And often you're limited by, it's going to sound, that's very generalized, but I find that most high-level people that I deal with aren't really that great in terms of asking questions. And I guess, like you said at the start, they are where they are because of the pathway that they've had. Most people don't get coaching. Most people don't focus on growing themselves every day. So I find a lot of people that are maybe around my age in organizations, they've been so beaten down by the system, and depending on how big the organization is and the red tape and so forth, it would be very refreshing when they in front of somebody that they can see your genuine passion and enthusiasm for a role, and you're bringing something that is different to what most people will do.
Well, and that's the point too, right? Is if you ask the same questions as everybody else, if you are understandably scrambling 10 minutes before your next interviewee walks in the door because you got work to do and you kind of forgot, and Outlook pops up with a reminder that you got to log into Zoom and talk to this person, and all you're doing is Googling common questions for a software developer, common questions for a sales manager. you're not hiring based on proficiency, based on intelligence, not just knowledge, but intelligence and creative problem solving. You're hiring based on those who either got lucky because they picked to study the same test that you're given,
Yeah.
or those who are highly rehearsed and performative. And those are all quickly discovered as total disasters once they get into the role.
So let's talk about AI. Obviously, the last 6 months, it's the fastest growing thing that I've seen in business, probably since the internet, even though I didn't start business before the internet, but certainly before some of these social media platforms. I've been in business 15 years now. So when I started, like, believe it or not, Facebook was not a huge thing. TikTok didn't exist. Instagram was like, yeah, well, you didn't really do business on it. You just took some photos and stuff. Let's go from the hirer's perspective to begin with. Obviously, it's very easy to create the world's best CV or resume that you can send to an employer. That sounds just absolutely amazing. What are some tips that hirers or employers can use to help demystify, okay, is this just an AI generated thing? Obviously, there are other steps, but if you're getting, I went through a process just this last week where I put up a job on Upwork actually, and I got over 20 applicants. Now, one of the things I put in my post was attention to detail is very important to me. So please do these steps in responding to this. And clearly people just copy, paste. And so I didn't even look at them because they obviously don't have the attention to detail because they failed the first step. So what are your sort of top tips for helping employers in this situation?
So I love what you did there, Rob. I call that adding more barriers to entry, right? Because we simply don't want somebody who is rapid fire clicking apply now, right? Those people are just casting the widest, biggest net and hoping something hits. We don't want to hire those kind of people. So I think what you said is kind of these Easter eggs, these the brown M&Ms, so to speak. Have you heard of like that term, that story, right? I think it was AC/DC or Guns N' Roses, one of the 80s hair metal bands put in their contracts of their venues, no brown M&Ms in the dressing room. And it got out as being this like, oh, they're pretentious, they're celebrities, like look at them throwing their weight around. But really it was a red herring to say, okay, well, if there are brown M&Ms in the candy dish, maybe they didn't really do really good jobs about checking all the harnesses or the speakers, or maybe, there's no locks on the doors, or maybe there's all these safety violations, right? And so what you did there is you threw in a brown M&M clause. Hey, simply put the word Blue Jay, in the subject line of your response, and I'll make sure to prioritize you. And so you're easily weeding those out who simply just can't follow directions. I think the other thing too, in terms of looking at resumes, you need to understand kind of cross your eyes a little bit and play a little dumb and saying, if all I know about this, if I have to hire this person based on this resume, do I think they're going to add maximum value to my organization? Again, we're moving away from qualifications, right? We're moving away of, can this person do the job based on their resume, versus can this person genuinely help me solve my problems, bring me relief, and move the needle in all the metrics that need to be built? And if that's a no, that's a great way for you to get that person dismissed, because they are not trying to convince you that they're the most valuable person in your company. They're trying to convince you that they're the most qualified person for the job. And those two people are very vastly different in the kind of positive impact they can make on you and your business.
So in the US right now, would you say it's more of an employer market or an employee market in terms of
employer market, right? It's definitely slow, unfortunately.
So you think has that shifted in your economy?
Yes, during kind of height of COVID, Great Resignation, it was absolutely an employee's market. Now, still that had strategy intact, but now that there are more layoffs happening and people seeking, there are less volume opportunities out there. It is definitely an employer's market with the right strategy, being different on purpose and with strategy. There's ways for a lot of people to cut through the noise and get through the hundreds of applications that are coming in per position.
how much does flexibility now become I'm talking about working conditions, flexibility become an absolute must for employers now? Obviously, pre-COVID, you could go to your boss and say, "Hey, look, I'd like to work from home 2 to 3 days a week," and say, "What are you talking about? We don't do
Yeah,
that here."
unheard of.
Um, but how much things like that, the working from home and maybe other things that just attract the right people to your business now?
I think my whole philosophy is I want people on both sides of the table, candidates and employers, to meet as much in the middle as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes with hybrid and remote work situations. Obviously, the match has to be there. The culture has to fit, right? Because you don't simply want a cog in the machine. You want a creative problem solver. But you have to also understand that I would have to argue majority of the work being done out there and the problems being solved out there, a vast majority of them don't need to be done from any specific location.
Yep.
Right. And so by creating a culture of trust, which is what remote work is, right?
Mm.
We trust you enough to work from wherever so that we don't have to tap you on the shoulder. So we don't have to track your use history. Like, we just trust you to do the dang job. Right. And if you bring that to an employee that you really love and can meet them in the middle there, you become such a much more attractive uh, company.
Mm.
Right. I've, in the last 2 years working with candidates, kind of post mid peak, post mid, wherever we're at in COVID here, um, that's a vast priority for them, right? They want a 10-foot commute, not an hour commute,
Yeah.
right? They want to be able to work in their PJs. They want to be, that flexibility is huge. Now, what I tell them is, if you want to ask for all that value, you want to ask for a high salary, remote work, good benefits, you have the absolute right to do so. But you have to communicate the value that you're bringing. It has to be a meeting in the middle. And that
Yeah.
goes for the employers too. Like, if you want the top notch, highest performer, biggest needle mover, that's great. But you got to provide that value. And that goes, for more than just throwing money at the problem. That includes like work remote, culture, all those things that empower an employee.
Yeah, great points. Obviously, where I spend most of my time these days is in the health, the wellness, the mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that type of space. Let's talk about health and wellness first, and then I want to split the perhaps the physical presence in an interview. How important is that to somebody? Obviously, if somebody's in really poor health and they're presenting in a certain way, say that they're like, I work with clients that need to lose anywhere between it could be 5 kilos or over 100 kilos. Now, obviously, that's showing up physically very different. And I don't know what the right term for it is, whether it's fatism or something.
Sure.
If somebody
Yeah.
is presenting a certain way, how important is it in this day and age for employers when they're looking at candidates to see that, well, I want this person to be a picture of health, or I just don't want them to be a picture of poor health?
I think it's, how is this person treating themselves everywhere in their lives?
Mm.
Right? Because if you have poor health, if you are extremely overweight, if you are a substance abuse addict, if you are unable to keep those things together from, you know, outside of work, I think it can be a point of contention and concern, right?
A bit of
I
a red
think
flag.
too, it's what I tell somebody kind of struggling with this is like, you, there are things that are happening in your life that I think are, and somebody who has, tried to be healthy and worked out and being physically active and struggled with that. Like, it's a practice, not a perfection, right? Being healthy, you got
Yeah.
to practice it every day. I think it's making sure that you are not even coming across, but you are wholly working on yourself in the ways that you need the best help, whether that's a physical health, emotional health, mental health, right? Because if you're whole, and I tell some of my clients who are unemployed, right? Like, you cannot wait to be happy. You cannot wait to be satisfied. You cannot wait to be relieved until you get the new job, because that does two things for you. One is it always makes you live in a place of less than and of want, which is just a miserable experience, right? Instead of being content for what you have. But
Yeah.
also is that if you're looking for the happiness somewhere else, you're going to come across desperate. You're going to come across needy. You're going to be an unattractive candidate. And so I think working on yourself, self-awareness, and self-growth are good things for us to do just for ourselves, but also are really important to signal to an employer, and the right employer,
Yeah.
that you are going to work hard to better yourself no matter what area of life that goal falls into.
Well said. So when it comes to, say, showing up to the interview, uh, what should people be wearing?
I'm always for mirroring what you see, right? Like if what you see that makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel confident. I would always encourage people to overestimate what that is versus underestimate,
Yep.
right? Um, I think there is a level, while we are always taught, and I believe that we shouldn't judge books by their covers. I think you should judge yourself by how you're showing up,
Yep.
right? And so if you feel confident and don't need the shirt, the dress shirt and the tie and the three-piece, that's fine. But I think it's about making sure that you're presenting in a way that helps people understand that you mean business and that makes you feel comfortable and confident, right?
Yes.
Like it makes you stand up a little taller, shoulders go a little back, right? You feel good. And
Yes.
so, not only professional clothes, well-fitting clothes, comfortable clothes, like things that are not too cold or too hot, all those are imperative.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 resources out there on what exactly you should wear. I think before you Google, just make sure, do I feel comfortable and confident about what I'm going to put on for this professional conversation?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. A good tip. I mean, if I use myself here right now, I mean, we're recording a podcast, and in what I'm about to say doesn't mean that you're dressed the wrong way. Okay.
No, sure.
The way that I like to show up, people know that I work in health and wellness and fitness and so forth. If I turned up in a singlet top and workout gear, people would say, "Oh yeah, that matches what it is that you're doing." But I guess it's twofold, because I have the business, and then this is kind of working on my personal brand as well, which is what I bring to my industry is a level of professionalism and maturity that's often missing. But
Mm-hmm,
also,
mm-hmm.
I think it's a sign of respect for me to my guests to say, well, do you know what? I'm showing up in what I think is the best way to present to you, because you do only have about 3 seconds to make that first impression. And I'm sure that if prior to us meeting, this is the first time we've had a conversation, that you would have perhaps had a perception about me, right? Now, if I turn up in a singlet top and that's either going to match what you were thinking. I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is a little bit more laid back than I thought it would be. Or if I had a beach background or, something like that. So I think it is really important, because everybody judges a book by their cover uh,
Sure.
in, in those first 3 seconds. So I think
Yeah.
there's some really good
Uh,
tips there.
and for those who are listening instead of watching us today and can't have those who see us, Rob is in a immaculately tailored suit right now with a great green tie, and I am in a V-neck shirt, cotton shirt, and a little bit of a hoodie zip up. Very comfortable here in San Diego, California. And I would say, as much as you're trying to show up and kind of buck the expectation for somebody in your industry, Rob, I think I'm trying to do the same, right? Like I think a lot of people look at HR and corporate America and leadership in these, kind of to use an extremely dated reference, like a Wall Street Gordon Gekko kind of way,
Yes.
right? And I'm trying to present myself as somebody who is bringing actual humanity to human resources. And so what I wear may not always be this comfortable, so to speak, but I spent way too long wearing a full suit and tie, and I really hope to never have to wear one on a regular basis ever again.
Yeah, I get that. Jeff, you made some good points there before. I think because I haven't always looked like this, right? And I didn't always have
Hmm.
confidence either, even though I've always valued my health and wellness. But at some point, probably a decade ago, I decided to engage the services of a professional stylist. and they showed me that I was wearing the wrong style. So I'm short. I'm like only 5'5".
Okay.
And I was wearing the wrong size suits, the wrong size and cut of shirts, and the wrong shoes. So basically, it made me look shorter. Uh,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So now I wear fitted suits. So they're tailored. So they're,
Mhm.
I suppose slim fit is the right word. So there's a slim fit shirt, and so it hugs the body as opposed to just drop straight down. I wear very fancy ties. So my coach has got a tie company. So that, and I get compliments all the time now, and getting the right shoes and all that kind of stuff. So it is worthwhile investing in that. And so what it did for me was, when she gave me the shoes and the pants and everything, I thought, oh, what is this? I'd never wear that. And I put it on. I'm like, why have I not been wearing this before? Because
Mm.
it just gave me so much more confidence, knowing that I feel really good about how I look. And that's really important with your,
I think it's a perspective. It's how you want to show up for yourself,
yeah,
right? Like if you are not comfortable, if your shoes don't fit, if you feel like you're swimming in your suit or your blouse, like you're just not going to show up in the way that you know you're capable of. So
yeah, you're going to be
that is
self-conscious.
one thing in your life that you have complete control over, is what you wear.
Yeah.
So even if you can't get professional support like you did, I think just getting perspective and just putting a little bit of thought into what you're wearing, so that you are showing up and being seen in a way that you want to on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's dig into you a little bit, and like your business,
Sure.
so we can get a bit of an understanding about that. What would you say is important to you right now?
I am out there helping employers, leaders, talent acquisition teams work to identify, shift away from looking for people who simply check the box and fit the mold for what technically needs to be done in a role, into building up a team of high performers and future leaders by engaging those who are excited to solve problems.
Okay.
Right. And so by doing that through, company-wide um, trainings, doing that through ongoing office hours with my clients, doing that through direct coaching and support throughout being on the other side of the interview process, and helping them kind of reevaluate their candidate experience, all the way from job description to application to onboarding and first day, to help them engage high quality candidates who can make a difference not only for their bottom line, but for all the people in their organizations as well.
So your answer to this next question may be the same, but what's your biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment?
I think as it's funny. You're in the service industry, I'm in the service industry. We know that our clients need to come first. We're here to give as much value and have as much impact, and we'll do our best to meet our clients in the middle. Too many employers are not treating their employees as well as they're treating their clients. The other thing is, we both know that it is much more expensive, much more laborious to get a
Get a
new
new one.
client than to retain an old one.
Yep.
And companies have fallen off, and maybe never were. We just were in a different time, right? They're not meeting their employees where they're at in the middle right now to get them to stay, right? And so helping companies better understand, hey, if we treated our employees as well or as better as our customers, how much more better would we be as a whole organization?
Yeah, nice. What would you say is your superpower?
Oh, I love that question. I think for me, it is about knowing the right questions to ask to dig deeper. And that's what ultimately I teach my clients, right? Like, you can ask to tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult customer. Tell me about a time where you had to, turn a yes into a no, all those like very generic, very obvious questions. But if you really want to know somebody and trust them at a granular level, you have to go deeper, and you can't be afraid to go deeper either. And I think people just don't know how to take it to that next level. And so having that innate gift and honing it over many, many years I've now have the luck and the blessing to teach it to others, to help them go deeper with others, to build that rapport, to build that trust, and to really forge really beautiful partnerships.
I think if you can really master question asking, you will really separate yourself from, well, not just the next candidate, but the person you're next to. And it's one thing that I've been focusing on a lot over the past few years, and also purposefully why I do these podcasts every day. I'm not always interviewing someone every day, but also why I don't write down all the questions, so it forces me to listen and think quickly, so I can even ask a question in response to what it is that you've just said. So it is a really cool superpower. So let's go on the dark side now. What's your kryptonite? Or what do
That's a
you
good
hate
question.
doing?
I think, for me, it is, I need to have better patience for those that aren't ready to go deep, right? I think, for myself, I see a lot of potential in others. I'm excited for others' abilities, even when they don't see it
Don't
themselves.
say
I mean, that's what a coach does, right? A coach is there to push, to reveal, and to grow, right? And so when people put up their walls and they aren't willing to ask themselves the questions, right, or to contemplate what I'm asking, or are dismissive, it frustrates me. And I think I need to be better at knowing that it is not their response isn't a never, it's simply just a not right now. They're just not ready to hear you're not ready to learn the lesson or hear the response or what have you. And so I think it's about being better at meeting those people where they're at in this moment, and hopefully in a new moment they're ready to meet me where I think they can go.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I find in my work that, yeah, I see people's true potential, but I also see those people that just make excuse after excuse after excuse. And their whole life has been a series of those, because you are where you are because of the decisions and excuses that you've made. And it's trying to coach people to make those small changes, better decisions, so that they can stop procrastinating, stop making the excuses, to bring out their best them. But that is one of the reasons why I think I probably couldn't. I would be so much better if I went back into corporate now, but I don't think I could, because I would just be probably peeing off so many people, because I would just not tolerate their excuses and their poor work ethic. So yeah, look, I'm going to give you the final word in a second. This has been a great interview, Kolby. You've delivered a whole bunch of content here. I'm going to put your social links underneath this podcast so that people can
Great.
reach out to you, see if they want to engage you. It doesn't matter where you're based in the world. Kolby can work with you. Last word I'm going to give to you. What's the best advice you've ever received, and why is it so powerful to you?
You don't always have to know the answer, but you sure as well be ready to figure it out. And for me, that has been a freeing concept of saying, you know what? You don't always have to know. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And subsequently, I've learned that you shouldn't be. If you're the smartest person in the
Right.
room you are right now, it's time to find a new
You're in
room.
the wrong room.
Yes. And I think what I know is, for me, that statement and that advice has allowed me to experiment more in my life, to try new things, to not take things as seriously or as give things too much weight. That brings up fear and anxiety. But also that, hey, like, to some extent, we're all just kind of making it up as we go along. And those that get farther and making it up are willing to have the courage to say, I don't know, but then have the gumption to go figure it out, and have the courage to ask for help. I think, it's funny. The older I get, the more I realize is the more help I ask for, magically, the more help I get. Who knew? And
Yeah.
so if you're struggling out there and if you feel stuck, somebody out there can help, but you have to make it known that you need the help, and somebody will find you to provide you with the support, the perspective, the work, who knows, but you gotta come to the table first.
Well said. Well, everybody, it's been a great pleasure in delivering this podcast to you today. Please reach out to Kolby. Tell him how you liked this episode. Please like, subscribe, share it with all the people that you can. Kolby, we'll have to get you on another stage. It's been a great conversation today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it.